We're going to watch Harry Supporta's presentation to the board about safety on the East Side Max. I really am not going to have much comment on the material other than what they say and what they do not coincide. So just because he's making this nice presentation doesn't mean it's going to translate to anything. Also, we know about Harry, and Harry is basically a hack. Okay, he's not objective. He was installed by McFarlane because he could trust him. I mean, he recruited him from South America because he knew him. But be that as it may, I mean, Dollar Sturdy and David Sale were impressed by this presentation, so who am I to degrade it? But I just want people to realize that what these executives say and what these executives do are not anywhere near close to the same thing.
All right, let's move on then to the East Side pedestrian safety improvements. Harry Supporta.
As Harry comes up, maybe just a few words of introduction as we boot up the PowerPoint, and you have copies in your supplemental little blue folder here. As many of you know, and as I noted earlier, our East Side Max system is now approaching 30 years old. And the state-of-the-art related pedestrian improvements 30 years ago is not the state-of-the-art today. And so as we begin our rehabilitation of the older sections of our line, we are paying close attention to the pedestrian improvements. We've already made a number of improvements along the line over a period of time, and I wanted Harry to share what those current best practices are and some of our efforts to rehabilitate the system in that regard. So, Harry?
Good morning, President Warner and board members. Over the years, TriMet has made there's been enormous growth and development along the light rail lines. And for this reason, it's really important to do a periodic assessment of whether the current pedestrian safety measures are effective and are still applicable. It's also important to keep in mind that that no one single treatment really can be applied to all of the alignments because of the great variety in the configurations and the operating environments. And we've also learned quite a bit over the years as to what appears to work and what doesn't appear to work so well. So with that, there are really four design principles that we have to keep in mind. One is to respect the urban environment. What this really means is maintaining the existing travel patterns to the extent possible. So we study that. Secondly, it's to comply with pedestrian light rail operator expectancies. What does that mean? That means really assessing what are the pedestrian behaviors, what would we expect them to do, how do we expect them to behave, and then to simplify decisions and minimize user confusion, and then lastly to transmit the level of risk. Is it safe to cross? With those principles in mind, we looked at four key areas along the east side alignment. We looked at the Gateway Transit Center, the Gresham. There are four crossings in Gresham that we looked at. We also looked at 97th and East Burnside. And then as a much larger effort, looking at the Renew the Blue State of Good Repair project. First, I'd like to give you an overview of the Gateway Transit Center. As you probably know, Gateway is the busiest transit stop that we have within the alignment. It serves about 2.5 million boardings annually. That's because we have multiple bus routes along this line. There are 3 MAX lines that converge at the station. There's a large clinic. There's a large shopping center just across from the transit center, a very large park and ride. And then there's the ODOT multi-use path along the alignment. And all of these facilities serve to provide daily travel around the Gateway area. So with that in mind, what improvements were we looking at? First of all, we were looking at channeling pedestrians and cyclists at the Gateway Center to control them into a predictable pathway, improve ADA accessibility, improve pedestrian awareness at crossing locations, provide better cues to identify pedestrian intent at a crossing. This is for the benefit of the rail operators and the bus operators. And then to improve security by fencing off a very large area where there was quite a bit of trespass into the trackway or across the bus travelways. So what I will be doing now is providing you with a series of photos, because I think that's really the best way to illustrate what those improvements are. Also, keep in mind that some of these improvements are still underway. We have not completed all of these projects. So with this photo, what we're seeing is a before and after. And what we were doing in attempting to do here was to begin to channel pedestrians into a particular pathway and to orient them onto so as to face the oncoming trains before entering the tracks. It's also to encourage the pedestrian to give an intent to the rail operator. So if you look at the photo, what it does is that as they begin to cross, they are forced to look towards the left where the approach of a train might be coming, would be coming from. We also improved the signage at this location by placing pavement markings and to highlight that this is a crossing and to encourage them to look both ways before crossing. This is something that we've always been taught. You should look both ways because trains do operate in both directions. At this location, we also made a number of improvements to bring it up to current ADA standards. With the next one, this is at the north bus loop. The problem here was that people were traveling to and from across the roadway. They would use the wide gravel area. In other words, the pathway was not always well defined, and we were trying to channel and focus the pedestrian movements across the busway there. Afterwards, what we did was we began to put in channelization. You can see some of that just if you look at the photograph to the right. You can see some of the pipe railing to the left. We also provided striping in the crosswalk to provide visual indication as to where we wanted the pedestrians to cross. There was also fencing provided in a landscaped area, and you can see some of the fencing in the photograph to the right. I think this is a pointer. There it is. So there's some fencing here and fencing here. And then we also use chevrons to, again, orient the direction that we wanted pedestrians to cross. Tactile warning strips were placed here to, again, provide a treatment to indicate to the pedestrians that they were about to cross an area where there was heavy bus traffic.
Harry?
Yes.
In the picture on the far side there where the chain link is coming down,
Yes.
and it looks like there's a large cement area. Yeah, you got
Yes.
it there. Can people come there, and would that fence encourage or allow them to duck from that cement pad rather than going around the fence to the crosswalk?
In this area right here, this is a parking area that we've created, but it really doesn't lead to anything because the
okay.
fence wraps around So typically, they would not congregate in this area.
Yeah, so people couldn't get in there.
No. Well, they can get in there, but there's nowhere to
But
go.
it'd be difficult, yeah.
Yeah, there's nowhere to go. So
Okay.
that's why also this fencing here, there's a fence along this curb line. So the only realistic way to cross and to get to the multi-use path is to use this actual crossing right here.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Again, the attempt is to try and channel pedestrians and guide them in the direction that we wish them to go.
Right.
And in this area also, bus traffic is one way. So with this orientation, they would be tending to look to the left, they being the pedestrians. In this photo, what we had previously in this area, and you can see some of the signing was beginning to wear, is that the crossing was not very well delineated, and this whole area was very wide, and we saw quite a bit of trespass down into the trackway. There were no barriers to guide them. Afterwards, we began to install a series of pipe rails so the pedestrian would travel into this area, again with train traffic coming from the left. It would orient them towards the direction that the train would be approaching, and the stop here sign would be in place with the tactile warning strips. And note, we also provided other guides to indicate exactly where the pedestrian was to cross. Look both way signs were also placed to encourage looking in both directions, even though that the orientation was to get them to begin to look to the left.
Public has a question. How long was it like this before it became that?
Several years,
How many is several?
25.
25 years. This is my question as John Q. Public.
What-
Why
what you-
did
what-
it take 25 years for that to happen? Can we not, when we build these things, when we build this new light rail system, when we build all these systems, can we build them like this first and have them engineered properly?
Yes.
And just
Thank-
let the engineers warn that they need to address the issues of pedestrian safety at the point of development.
Thank you, appreciate your comment, but maybe you could hold comments till we're done here. And I think we got a public forum where you can ask those questions, all right?
Okay.
Thank you.
But again, those questions, as it's here, as everybody's here, we address the issue,
Understand.
it's no.
So maybe we can open up after this, but let you get through your presentation. Then we'll-
Sure.
Thanks, I appreciate you letting me interrupt for a minute.
Okay. So now we're looking at another area of the transit center, and here we had an area of where buses travel. Oops. And so the buses would lay over in this area and serve stops, and then travel to the north. What we saw was that many of the passengers would cross into this area because this was considered non-TriMet property, and they would smoke or tend to loiter. So in cooperation with ODOT, we erected this fence to discourage the movements across this travelway, and I'm happy to report that this has been extremely effective. We do not get very many pedestrians or passengers any longer congregating in this area before because of the fence that has been placed here. So what we have now done is discouraged risky behavior crossing in front of buses as they begin to pull away from their stops and go towards the north to exit the transit center. One of the unintended consequences that we identified after the improvements were made is that this pipe railing here, previously, some believed that it was still advantageous to take a shortcut, and you can see there's the crossing in this area here. It was still advantageous to take a shortcut and walk along the tactile warning strip, or worse, into the trackway. So we placed these added signs, which we are now doing at all of our locations where we use this type of pipe railing, including in the west side. That's an overview of the Gateway Transit Center. In Gresham, we are focusing initially on 4 crossings: Division Street, Main, Hood, and Roberts. And this is a project that is still underway, and it hasn't been completed, and we expect that to be completed in the spring of 2014. But I do have a series of photographs that can illustrate the improvements that we're making. So you can see here where there's an individual that is trespassing or crossing not in a manner that we would encourage pedestrians to cross. So we are beginning to put in a series of pipe railings to begin to channel the pedestrians into a crossing rather than into this area where it's not channeled and it's not focused, so that it provides the rail operator a better indication of intent to cross, and they can focus their attention into the crossing in this area here. What we will also be doing is installing part-time warning devices that will also signal the approach of a train. This will be done at all 4 crossings that we have. And then at 97th and East Burnside, this is the current crossing here, and currently we do not have a way to channel the pedestrians. And so the intent is to begin to provide pipe railings again to channel them across this area. The lines of sight also needed to be improved, and that's why we're moving the crossing from this area to one of this area. This improvement will also include a part-time warning device to indicate the approach of a train. And then lastly, as part of our Renew the Blue project, we are looking from Hollywood to 181st, and also the Ruby Junction crossing at 197th, and then Gresham City Hall in Cleveland. All of these locations will also be improved over time. We are including part-time warning devices, pavement delineation signage, and channelization. And one last comment, and that's to address the earlier comment that was made. It has taken us 25 years, and we've learned much over those 25 years. When there initially, back in 1986, there were a series of assumptions that were made. We're a lot smarter today. So our design criteria has been upgraded substantially. So are we making these improvements as we advance into new projects? The answer is absolutely, because our design criteria has been updated. And in fact, it continues to be updated. With these very improvements, we've gone back and are now beginning to make other upgrades to our design criteria, understanding that still there's much work to be done. So it's a work in progress, And we made improvements on the west side, and these are the improvements that we are intending to make on the east side. And as we learn more about pedestrian behaviors, we'll even make further improvements.
Questions or comments from the board?
Yeah. Is this standard around the world?